first thing when I look at you is, and it's going to be harsh, so I apologize, but the first thing that I look at you, you're way too fucking young to be an owner of a soccer club. How did this happen?
I cold called him. That's the short version of how I got involved. The first dream job I can remember having when I was little is I wanted to own the Phillies. I didn't want to play for the Phillies. I didn't want to coach the Phillies. I wanted to own the Phillies. And then growing up a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan, that's pretty self-explanatory. Just, everything they've done in terms of just the passion the city has for the team. That's always been me, just that fan that cares way more than they should on every single snap of the game. Not just, if they win, it's every single second of the game. So I kind of took that mindset and that passion of mine and typed it up into a sales pitch email. In 24 hours, they had responded. And as soon as I got the response, I was like, this is going to get done.
You're not just like going, hey, the Dorking Wanderers look interesting. Maybe they're interested in, but like, how did you decide on the Dorking Wanderers?
So I was back I think I was in college at the time. I watched a documentary called Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix. So that was the first time that kind of opened my eyes up to the English pyramid system and how they structure sports in England and the rest of Europe. So seeing that documentary kind of, sparked that idea. And then I kind of worked down the pyramid to see what a realistic entry point to sports ownership would be. Because with promotion and relegation, in theory, if your team is way down the pyramid, one day they could end up in the Premier League. So it's not this closed billionaires boys club that the NFL or NBA is. There's some wiggle room there. So I'm just working down the list and doing a bunch of research. And I stumbled upon the Dorking Wanderers and, clicked into the club, found some articles, YouTube videos, and I found out that they were founded in 1999 by the same person who owns and also coaches the team, Mark White, who has, become a good friend of mine at this point. And I thought the story was just absolutely insane, right? That's the dream in practice. They actually have the British record of promotions in that time. It's 12 promotions in 23 playing seasons minus COVID. So he was putting that dream into practice, and I saw all these interviews and articles, and it seemed as if he was open to an investor of some sort, but the right type of investor, somebody who kind of, spoke the same language as him. And I think that initial email I sent resonated with his ideals and goals, and that story captivated me. So that's what I took a chance on.
My goodness. So to put this in perspective, if for an American football audience, let's say, you're telling me that the pyramid out there in the Premier League, the Dorking Wanderers could be the Doylestown Eagles, let's just say, and the Philadelphia Eagles are in Philadelphia. And you're saying at one point somebody could own the Doylestown Eagles and play in the NFL at some point.
100%.
That's how it works out there.
Yeah, so there's about, I want to say like 15 levels on the pyramid, and you start as a beer league team, essentially, just you and your buddies. You pay to play, you drag the nets out yourself. You have your team, you file with the English FA, the Football Association, and boom, you're a team. So you kind of take it from there, and Dorking has done that in, a way that no other team in history has done before.
Can you call Roger Goodell and tell him to do that? Because that just seems, wouldn't that be exciting on this side of the earth if there's like the ability to just start a football team and maybe one day be in the NFL?
It would be amazing if it could function that way. You'd get a lot of, smaller markets and cool places and more interesting stories, I think. But like I said before, it's a billionaire boys club, and they're not going to open up the system to, have a potential of their teams falling in value if they get relegated.
So I just want to make sure I got all this straight then. You watch a documentary that inspires you about just English soccer culture in general. You find Mark White and you go, man, that guy is awesome. You realize he just started his club in 1999. He's had tremendous success. You look like or he looks like he needs an investor. You end up calling him. How does he say yes to you?
I mean, I was shocked that he answered, right? Like you send that email and you're like, the guy's probably never going to answer me. He's probably heard 1,000 stories like this. What if they do? So they did by the grace of God or whatever reason. I think the executive director of the club, Chris Lee, who's also owner of the club, he saw the email and he said, Mark, you might want to take a look at this.
How did you convince Mark, I guess, to say yes? Like, what was the thing that sold him the most?
Yeah, so he gave me his number and we started communicating on WhatsApp, and I was doing it on English time. So he would, wake up in the morning and send me a message and we'd have a little back and forth, voice messaging. If my wife didn't know what was going on in terms of me trying to negotiate ownership of a soccer team, she absolutely would have assumed that I was cheating on her based on me going into the bathroom and listening to voice messages at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, on a pretty much daily basis for about 3 or 4 months. So that was just like a funny thing that was always happening.
And to be fair, it's easy to fall in love with Mark. So
yeah, he's a maniac, but he's the front man of the band, as I always say. Very lovable guy, just a excellent personality, excellent face of the club and everything that they do. And you have to know what you're doing to some extent to take it from nothing into what it's become today.
And would you say like Mark is the biggest reason why you love the team so much, why you love the Dorking Wanderers?
A very large portion of it, just because, the story of the club isn't the story of the club without Mark. I mean, he's had a lot of help along the way, a lot of, community influence, volunteers. It's grown more and more as the years have gone on with each promotion. But it's a combination of Mark, it's a combination of the town and the people, and it's a small town. I think the population of Dorking specifically is 12 to 15,000 people. So you have this close-knit community that, 30 years ago didn't have a team that they could support in their town. Mark starts this whole thing, and now they have a team that could be playing in a few leagues above where they're at today in a couple years. They could be in the Premier League one day. How do you put a price on somebody bringing a sports franchise to your small town? Like, that's just unbelievably incredible to me.
So this is yet again like kind of a welcome to Wrexham moment for you. Is that fair to say? Like, it seems like since then, did that drive any idea of watching them and seeing what Ryan Reynolds and all that is doing and being like, why not me?
So Welcome to Wrexham came out a little bit before I got involved in all of this. That kind of gave me the idea on the National League being a starting point.
And what has been like the biggest, amazement or surprise ever since you guys decided, hey, we're going to do this thing together? Like, what have you learned so far?
The biggest surprise was honestly them answering. I couldn't believe they answered. It's just like, it kind of feels like a dream come true, but nothing was done yet. And I negotiated everything with Mark directly. We got our lawyer involved. They had their lawyers involved. We did some research. They shared some information with us. We signed an NDA. So we, really did our homework over the course of that 3-4 months that I had assistance with. But, everything was done between Mark and I. So that was a pretty big surprise to just do it over WhatsApp conversations. Other than that, the biggest surprise is kind of just the day-to-day of, if you go on the team website, and this might not be a big deal to some people, but if you look at club staff, it has me as a director of the club on their website. So it's Mark, it's Chris, and then my name is listed there as well. Seeing that for me is just like, that is a dream come true.
What is your biggest goal then with the team right now? Like, what do you think is your driving force?
The biggest driving force is, I think this story is too good to not share with the rest of the world. Obviously, I live in the United States, and I think that this is a story that people in the States would absolutely go crazy over. It's essentially you can't say it's the American dream, but you can say it's the English dream of starting a team in your backyard and taking it to the Premier League. That's, in theory, why the pyramid system exists, to give that, parity, that open system of you can take your team to the big time. So my biggest goal is to share that story with everybody here in the United States. I think that the sport is growing very quickly. I think there's going to be a huge boom of more youth playing the game post 2026 World Cup. And I say this to everybody, and I truly believe this, and I wouldn't say it unless I truly believed it. This is the best sports story of all time. It absolutely is the best sports story of all time, or at least it has the potential to be. Because I can envision sitting on my couch, 2 o'clock in the morning, a rerun of ESPN is on the TV, and Scott Van Pelt is telling everybody, can you believe this story of the Dorking Wanderers? In 1999, they were, they just started, and now in, 2030, 2040, whatever, they're in the Premier League in 30, 40 years. Like, that is just, it's insane. And I think that people should get on the ride with it now so they can remember what it was like today and truly understand how insane this whole operation is.
It's truly like I have a hard time closing my eyes and trying to find better sports stories. Like, even it tops any American sports story that I know, mainly because it's not tangible for a lot of Americans to grasp what you're doing. And now you're kind of walking that dream for us, which I think is fantastic. I always live vicariously through because you sold me on the story. That's why we're basically here today anyway. Like, we want to keep telling it as much as possible. Like, what is this truly about? Is it because it's beating the odds? Is that why it's the greatest story of all time?
Well, I think it's just because, a little bit of what you said, that's the thing, right? It's not tangible for people here to believe that. Like, we can't have that kind of story in the States. So that's number one. You can't even experience something like that if you're a fan of any team in the United States. But think of all the great sports stories of all time. LeBron winning in Cleveland, Jordan's 6 rings, Tom Brady, Eagles winning their first Super Bowl, the Cubs breaking that World Series drought. I know you're a big Cubs guy, so that one hits home for you. But, like if the Browns were to win a Super Bowl, a 16 seed upsetting a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, all these huge, huge, huge stories don't even come close to what it would be like to work 17, 15 steps up a pyramid and reach one of the largest sports leagues, one of the most popular sports leagues on the planet. England's only so big, and the Premier League is huge. And you're telling me that a town the size of Dorking could have one of those Premier League franchises within 10, 20 years? Maybe? That just can't put a price on that.
Describe Dorking to me. What is it?
It is the most interesting, charming small town you could possibly end up in. Everybody is incredibly friendly. Everything's local. And I mean this as a compliment in a good way. It almost feels like you're walking into a place 20 years into the past. It's not over commercialized with.
Wait, does that mean my talk boy is still in existence in Dorking?
It might be.
Okay,
but
good.
you got it. Once you walk into town limits, then it activates again. It's just a local community. The stadium's in the center of town. A lot of local sponsors are involved. Local business people. The people, the town, just everything about it. I go over there and go into a couple different pubs, have a couple, pints of Guinness or whatever. And it feels like home. It feels like home away from home. And, you're all the way 3,000-4,000 miles away from where I was born and raised. And it just feels just so natural and comfortable to be there.
And why does the town of Dorking love Mark White so much?
I mean, I think it's because of what he's given them, right? I think he is very in tune with the community and trying to give back. I mean, you have to at some point, right? In terms of trying to, you need that local support. And he, fights to make sure that the football team is as successful as possible. He just is there and he does not miss a single day of work, sick, whatever. He'll tell you how sick he is. If he is sick, he'll complain about it for sure. But, he's front and center every day and he's very, very passionate about it. So how could you not love somebody that's doing that in a place that is, their home?
And it's not just Dorking. And I think the best way that I've described Mark to people is if you've ever seen the movie Snatch, he's like 1 part Bullet Tooth Tony, and then he's just full on Gordon Ramsay. And if that's it, and if you put that personality into a soccer owner, that's what it is. Everyone feels like they want you guys to succeed a lot because of him and the story. Do you feel that all the time?
100%. I mean, people will come to dorking matches. You know, if a team was recently relegated or recently promoted, I think it's become a bit of a destination for away fans to go because of the story, because it's interesting. It's not a place you think you would end up. At least that's my perception of it. So, and seeing Mark freak out on the sidelines, like people will go just to heckle him and just, you know, say fuck off or give him the finger or something. And you're
wearing your wife's pants.
Yeah, like they say that he's wearing his wife's jeans or something because he always wears the tightest jeans possible, always black, of course. But just to go see Mark and all of it in action, he's brutally honest. He's an open book. He'll tell you exactly what he's thinking, and I know that's exactly what he's thinking because that's who he is, and you're seeing an authentic person do it all. So, you know, you can't fake being authentic. I don't know if that's like a obvious statement or not, but you know, you can tell when somebody's telling you the truth. And I think that kind of goes back to why he listened to what I had to say, because I was just telling the truth. I was just somebody that wanted to invest in what he was doing. And I think he saw that, and you know, what you get with him is what you get. And I feel like I'm kind of the same way. So it just, you know, it's just, it's just crazy.
And I wouldn't say your clothing styles match. But
Not
you
at all.
guys definitely have, like, you need the top. I've never seen anybody in sports need a Gucci jacket or hat and run around in a Bentley. And I've never seen somebody come into a podcast interview looking as sharp as you do. And I'm sure you want to drive a Bentley someday too. But like, that to me is pretty incredible. Like, it's just, you know, he can be that honest, that straightforward, and that is both authentically you. Both of you guys. You know?
Exactly. He's always posted up in a, you know, Gucci something or Prada. He's got a Prada jacket, and if he gets a new jacket and he wears it and they lose, he'll never wear the jacket again. He's extremely superstitious.
See, let's see. He should have been a Cubs fan. Yeah, so there you go. I'm not dissing it either. I'm also a self-described Adam Sandler dresser. So, you know.
Nothing wrong with it.
No.
So I'll start with the good. So when I originally was gearing up to invest into the club, there was money that I had to contribute, and there was also money that I needed to raise towards it. So I started a company called Supporter Sports Ventures, and the original idea behind that is that was going to be the company with a couple of us that invested into the football club. So it was my dad's idea to pitch. So our dads are cousins. So his dad's Michael, my dad's
Which
Ron.
makes you guys second cousins?
I say we're cousins.
We're cut. So technically you and my dad are second cousins.
I don't think that's right.
That is right. It's 100% true.
Wow. So your dads are second cousins to
No,
each
our
other.
dads are first cousins.
Oh,
but
got it.
since my dad's cousin's child is my dad's second cousin. So me and Jake are like second cousins once removed or third cousins or
cousins,
something.
then. I think that's how it goes.
I think it's easier.
Cousins.
Yeah. But think of us like first cousins.
Got it.
You know?
And how, like, you guys have had, would you say, like, more of a friend type of a relationship throughout your childhoods?
So when we were kids, we saw each other maybe like once, twice a year during the holiday season.
Holiday thing.
Yeah. But since this has all started, we talk every day pretty much. So now we're the best of friends. But
Well, Jake,
we always got along well.
how did he convince you to do this then?
So he called, and I remember sitting down with my dad, and Kyle was with his dad, who I will still say is our cousin. And they basically just said, look, we got an idea. Here's an NDA. We want to show it to you. I think you'd be into it. And they started walking through it, and immediately I thought it was a great idea. So that's kind of how it all started.
So, and what do you do for SSV?
Right now I'm doing like some of the marketing stuff, trying to come together with like a content strategy. We talk about basically everything. So everything from should we start a podcast to what should we do for video, social media, made the website, trying to get that going, and just trying to establish the best way to sort of tell this story to a lot of people and hopefully turn it into something.
Where do you want it to go?
That's a good question. Well, I think first of all, the most important part is is telling the story as it is today. And then I think after we can tell the story effectively, I would love to turn this into a bigger company, do this again with more sports teams, and kind of just run with it and see where we can take it long term.
Did you have some of the same dreams that Kyle had in terms of like, man, maybe I can own the Phillies one day? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think every kid, especially growing up in Philly, has that dream, right? Where you're going to be, everyone wants to be Jeffrey Lurie. When you're growing up in this city, everyone wants to have a piece of the Sixers. And I always have been super into sports my whole life, season tickets to all the Philly Eagles games. And, you know, I always dreamed of working in sports, but I was sort of waiting for the opportunity to try to make that happen. And Kyle came along with the opportunity, so.
how fast did the phone call go for you two? It seems like that's an instant
I mean,
yes when you call it.
we were just going back and forth right away. So it was kind of a match made in heaven, if you will. But what I want to do as a business, the way I see it is, I want to run the business. I want to map everything out. Like, I have the long-term vision, the dream, everything. Like, I know where it should go, where it needs to be, everything we want to do. But SSV has now become a sports marketing firm. I like to say it's a sports marketing company for the mid-size enterprise. So we want to do this for teams that are, trying to grow their brand, that might not have the financial resources to go and invest in things such as this right now because they're worried about fielding the most competitive team or building up their infrastructure, just things that naturally the business needs to take care of moving forward. So it's almost a way where, smaller entities can kind of outsource that marketing work. That's like the general idea of the company. So I have the vision of that, but I couldn't do any of it if I didn't have somebody who was in tune with all the specific marketing aspects like Jake. And he'll always kind of tell me that this isn't true or he'll downplay it. I genuinely could not have done this or got it to even where it is today without him. Like, this is a complete, like, it's SSV is me, and he always says that, like, I'm the company, which is true, but it's nothing without being able to have somebody like Jake that I trust and also respect his knowledge and his brain realistically. Like, if I have an idea, we workshop it. Having somebody like that off the bat that you can trust, that, like, Jake's my right hand man. And like I said, I couldn't do it without him. And that's, I'm firm on that, whether he believes it or not.
It feels like Jake shoots down really shitty ideas.
Yeah,
correctly. Like, it's just like, I feel like I get that vibe from him.
Yeah, he keeps me in line. I think most of my ideas are pretty good. And then sometimes he's like, yeah, like, I don't see it, or we can't really do anything with that. Or if I have something that I want to bring to life, that's who I call. And he's like, this is how we can go about doing that. Because I wasn't like trained in marketing or anything. I know from a fan perspective, what fans want. I'm very confident that I can deliver that. And I know where we need to be helping, but making that come to life, that's where Jay comes in.
Well, and this is kind of what's inspiring about your guys' story in itself, too, because I'll just be open and honest about this. I hate Josh Harris. I hope he never, ever owns another franchise for the rest of his life.
He's got a lot of them.
He's a criminal. I think everything in his organization is that, and it's just waiting to happen. I don't like where sports have gone. I've seen it on both sides. I've worked for it. I've covered it. It's not as fun as it used to be. I don't know what it is. And I think part of that is ownership. I think it is directly related to not having fun anymore. I was inspired by the owners of the Chicago White Sox of doing anything. And even though the disco thing didn't work out in the 70s, at least you're trying to have fun. I look at something like the Savannah Bananas. That's fucking fun. Baseball has not been fun for a long time, and it is incredibly boring. Sorry, guys. Like, I love the Cubs. I'll stick with them. I love the Eagles. I'll stick with them. You want me to care about the Sixers? Stop treating me like a piece of shit. So how do we fix that at SSV?
So I think we need to make hats now, like kind of like Make America Great Again hats, but we're going to do making sports fun again. So SFA, we're going to make sports fun again.
Jake, how do you feel about sports nowadays in terms of that? Do you feel like it's lost its fun?
I think it's lost its fun a little bit. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the Savannah Bananas, because that's something interesting they've been able to do is sort of break that third wall. So, like, going to a good example is like a Philadelphia sports fan. I mean, we go to the games, we pay a lot of money and a whole bunch more in emotional investment. And we realized pretty quickly we don't have any control over what happens. And I think sort of the big challenge now for sports franchises is going to be a way to bridge that gap, because people care a lot, they're acutely aware that they don't have an impact on how the game's going to turn out. But you need to do a little bit better of a job of improving the experience. I think that's sort of where our heads have gone, is how can we make this feel like if you're a fan, you're actually part of the team again. And I think that third wall, breaking through that is really the challenge that a lot of franchises are facing today.
And it might be a half idea if you've thought about it, but like, what would you do to make things fun again in sports?
With promotion and relegation overseas, you are essentially required to always be spending money to field the most competitive team, or there's serious ramifications for that. So that the process of that makes sports more fun, because you have to do it. Like, you don't have a choice. You can't just sit back and tank or collect the number 1 overall pick. There is an active incentive on a daily basis to always make sure you are very in tune with the business operations, or else you're fucked. And your team, before you know it, you could be in the Premier League in the Championship. Next thing you know, in 5 to 7 years, you're in the 5th, 6th tier, and you're like, where did this all go? Bad ownership, people come in and just ruin franchises. And these franchises are set up over there in neighborhoods. They're communities. They're like, if your small hometown had a professional organization. That is what I think of. That's why I wanted to be involved in this, because for me, that's what makes sports more fun. Like, I feel like a kid again doing all of this, seeing how we can help push Dorking forward, because that's fucking fun. Because what's more fun than a small town in England getting a professional Premier League team where, that coming Saturday, Man United's coming to town. To Dorking. Do you sign for Manchester United thinking that you're going to end up playing a match on a Saturday in Dorking? No, but it could happen. And that makes it fun.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. It feels like America is one of the only countries where you can actively be rewarded for poor performance. I mean, you see people tanking for the NBA lottery picks. You see people tanking to draft the best quarterback or left tackle in the NFL. In England, if you start tanking, you're going to get relegated, and that's going to hit the bottom line of your franchise. It's going to hit the pockets of almost every investor. And here in America, it's really not like that. So I think part of it too is really incentivizing competition. And we've sort of gotten into a place in this country with the 4 major sports where if you lose, you're going to get rewarded for that. So I think that's a big part of it too.
And yeah, and I'd say that has to deal a lot with, ownership and partnerships, things that are never going to go away, ownership that's never going to change hands, really. Like, there's nothing to drive American sports forward, and there's this constant thing because I am the casual soccer fan in the world. I actually got interested because Southampton was on kind of a similar run for a little bit, and then they went it's the same club that you described. They went zoop, zoop.
Yep.
And they've kind of been just stuck there forever. So when I look at Dorking and when I look at things like that, the craziest thing that I've ever seen in Philadelphia is surrounding Sam Hinkie of fandom. That was something I was a part of. And this is like that on steroids, because that guy's not going to change. Mark White's not going to change. And if you can have any effect on it, if I could give him $200, and if that made somebody get on the field for them, I'd do it, because I want them to succeed. That's the pull of this franchise right now. And I don't think you can, that's why I want to be a part of it. I want to dive into the pool of the Dorking Wonders because of that.
That's why I want to share this story with a city like this. I mean, the passion runs very, very deep. It's been my life, it's been Jake's life, it's been your life. And it's something that, our dads were fans, we're big fans, our kids are going to be big fans. I look at his Instagram and I see his 6-year-old daughter all dressed up in her Eagle gear, and that warms my heart, because that's how it's passed on, right? So is going to be the next biggest Eagles fan because her dad is a huge Eagles fan. This city has an appetite for a story like this, and we can all get behind it. It's fun. Let's make sports fun again, and let's get behind something like this where it's like, hey, it's a small town, a close community. You have ties in myself, who's a part of the team. Let's get behind it and support that, because all that support, that turns into dollars for the team in terms of buying merchandise or streaming the games. And, it's just something fun to be a part of in an ownership group and a person in Mark White that you can believe in, that you want to help take to the next step. So like I said, this city has an appetite for that kind of story. And I think that the country as a whole has an appetite for that kind of story because it does not exist here, and it truly never will. The MLS is never going to adopt promotion relegation. It's billionaires controlling it that's going to keep it a closed system, and it's just going to be this endless loop of, people are going to tank, and there really is not a reason why there shouldn't be more parity in the leagues. But there's still very poorly run franchises, and it should be more even given how there's, the money distribution and everybody spends the same in terms of NFL salary cap. Like, it should be a more open playing field, but it's not. And, let's get behind something more fun. I think there's more to it. People look at, football, soccer is not popular here, but there's more to just the game that you can get behind in a sports content consumption fashion that will, drive interest. And I think that's a part of what we're trying to do. Pittsburgh's got a smaller team. There's a couple teams in Virginia. Forward Madison is another team. They just told them all to go eat shit and fuck off because they don't want to financially support the smaller markets or the growing franchises. They have plenty of money. They can do it. Why aren't they doing it? They had no reason to do what they did. So yeah, the MLS is clearly never going to try to help.
I don't watch the MLS because it's boring. I don't watch the MLS because no one took care of it. And I hate to say this, but the Philadelphia Union, who are successful, who have a great stadium and a great program, are doing the same corporate thing. They're shoving out the fans the moment they got success. They're raising ticket prices. They're booting all the people out that got them there. There's rift in between the Sons of Ben. Like, it's just, you guys, the soccer clubs, don't do that.
No,
doesn't happen out there.
And that's what's I think so unique about a story like this is that when you look at American franchises and we talk about sort of the conglomerate of billionaire owners, a story like this, the people watching it, they get behind it, genuinely do have an opportunity to make a difference. I mean, you look at what Wrexham did, and they bought the team, and then they got the story out. All of a sudden, everyone's getting behind it. Fans are purchasing merchandise. People are streaming the games. They buy the best players. Now they're getting a promotion. So a story like this is really unique because obviously I don't know another Philly kid that cold called a professional soccer team and it worked. First of all, but having the community behind it is just it's a different sports story because if people do get behind it and do support the team, they will have success and you will be able to be there as they get promoted. So I think that's sort of why I was also so drawn to this is that it's just a different sports story. You have the ability to actually support a team and what you do will make a difference.
I love working with you guys in general is because of that same fact. Like, there are things that we want to get to eventually where the merchandise, the retailers from the United States, all that stuff, all of those dollars will help that club go up the ranks. Like, that doesn't happen here.
He said dollars or votes, right? And people probably understand that very well. But when you buy something from Nike or Adidas or Under Armour or Lululemon, you are financially contributing to your confidence in that company, whether you realize you're doing it or not. Do the Cowboys who bring in $1 billion a year, those dollars that people buy all their shitty Cowboys merch in, that's contributing to them financially. You're lining Jerry Jones's pockets, right? It doesn't fucking matter. Like, it does because of where they are today, but it doesn't. If you are buying Dorking merch or streaming the game, you're financially contributing to them in where they could be in the future. And that, I can promise you, has a real tangible effect on the roster and everything that the club wants to do moving forward. That's what we should be getting behind. We should be supporting these smaller, awesome communities and stories. And while I believe that Dorking absolutely has the best story, there's tons of other clubs in England and Spain and Italy that are smaller and growing and also have interesting stories that people can support because it's fun, it's interesting, and it makes you feel way closer to the team and actually being a fan or like a member of the club than it is over here, because it's giving money right back to the top when you do it. And I don't mind doing it for my teams because I love them, but like I said, it's just we can get behind financially and actually make a difference in a club like Dorking.
And it's pretty crazy to kind of put in perspective of like, literally, if you're doing $5,000 to $10,000 of merch sales a month, that would pay for 4 or 5 roster spots.
Yeah,
whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's just
and it's just so much more meaningful and awesome and real than anything that's set up in this awful closed system that we have in American sports.
Dorking Wanderers get to the Premier League, and you are both there in Dorking, and you see the game-winning goal go in to make that happen. What's the next thing you're doing after that?
Crying.
Lose my mind.
Crying. I'd be a mess. That would just be like, I mean, that's like legitimately a dream come true. So what you're describing is, how would you feel the very second you realize that like everything was worth it? Man, I would lose it. If they got one promotion, I would probably cry. I'd be a mess if they took that next step up, because that means that something we're doing along the lines is working.
I agree. I agree. I mean, and that's what it goes back to the original point, right? Where it's like you could get everybody in the city of Dallas, Texas to buy a Dak Prescott jersey. It's not going to put a new Mike linebacker on the field. But the more we tell this story and the more people follow it, to be able to have any impact at that level or that scale and to see it come true would be amazing.
Oh, what's the age gap between you guys?
Months.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's
like
good.
three months.
Yeah.
what were you guys like when you guys did get together? Was it just a lot of, hey, how you doing? See you next the holiday type of deal?
Well, it's nice because those holiday gatherings, right? When you're with family and extended family you haven't seen in a while, the first thing as a kid you do is scope out, okay, which one of these people is like in my age range. So
Yeah.
immediately I would gravitate towards Kyle and I'd be like, okay, we're hanging out for this evening because I'm not hanging out with my aunts or my uncles. So that was kind of what it would always be.
You know, probably always talking about the Eagles and sports and stuff, just that kind of conversation. Things that we talk about today is probably what we were talking about as kids, minus having ownership in an English football club.
Maybe some Crash Bandicoot.
Football club.
Maybe some Crash Bandicoot. Or no, that's probably too young for your time.
Probably Madden.
Probably
Madden. Probably me losing to Madden. Me losing to Jake and Madden.
Now I see where the problematic thing comes in, Jake.
Yeah.
I get it. The troublemaker on Madden. Probably threw the controller too many times, right?
4 verts every play.
He played sports more than I. Like, he played football and soccer growing up. I didn't play football and soccer growing up. I was always like a fan and I had the same level of interest, but he played. So like, you know, he'll start riffing about X's and O's and I'll be like, dude, like, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. And I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't really know much of what he's talking about because I should know more on that front. But, you know, he's always kind of had that knowledge as well. So you always know when you have a conversation with somebody about sports, you can tell how into it they are, if that makes sense. I don't want to like gatekeep sports fandom because everybody's involved in it the way they want to be. And that's great because we need support from all walks of life and levels of interest. But, you know, there's that person that you know that has that extra level of, man, I really fucking love this shit. And Jake's always had that, as have I.
When did you start playing football? When did you stop?
I started playing football, I would have been like 6 or 7. I played all the way through high school, got some college offers, ended up not playing in college, just did the student thing instead, which I regret a little bit, but it was a little easier. So
You regret being a student?
no, I regret not pursuing sports further.
Oh, got you.
Some offers, and there were some teams I liked, but it got to the point where I was like, you know, I'm not going to go to the NFL. I'm not going to go to the MLS. There's 1,000 people in the stands. This is not worth it. So I ended up just,
And
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, not that the college degree of where you got it is, you know, it's not the end all be all of everything, but the kid's got a degree from Johns Hopkins. So that's pretty fucking impressive. I went to West Virginia and Westchester. Loved both institutions.
nothing more fun than I did.
Nothing. I probably, but you know, probably a little too much fun. But here nor there. You know, like I said, super intelligent guy. So doing the student thing may not have been the worst thing that you decided upon.
Were you 6 flat?
Height-wise?
Yeah.
I wish. I'm 5'11".
I was gonna, okay.
I wish I could. I wish
Wasn't
I could.
asking you.
5'11".
Yeah, I wasn't too much.
So let's see. You had to be a corner.
In high school?
Yeah.
And slot receiver.
Okay. So those 3-a-day practices should have been illegal too, by the way. Man,
They got to bring him back. That's the problem.
Here we go.
They got to bring him
I
back.
threw up in every single one of them. So Yay on me during that.
I wouldn't know. I was in the stands.
What did your family members say when this happened? They're probably still chirping at you. I would assume there's probably going to be some love and some doubters, I would assume.
For me, so obviously, I raised the money, like I had what I could contribute, but I, called my dad, not to make this a nepotism story, but I pulled the financial report from the district that Dorking is in. Once I found the story, I wanted to gauge how financially viable the town was to support growth of the football club. So I put together a presentation for my dad to kind of pitch the idea to someone. And I was like, listen, I got something for you. I really want to show you in person. You're going to think I'm absolutely fucking crazy, but just please take it serious. That's all I ask, is you take it serious. He sees the presentation I put together and takes a minute, and he's like, all right, maybe reach out to the guy. I'm sure you're not the first one. So I was like, all right, reach out. They answer, as we covered that whole bit. And then my sister and her husband also invested with us, as did Jake and his dad, Mike. So in terms of family reception, it was actually pretty solid. I think some family we talk to still thinks it's a little crazy and out there, but they just don't see the vision. Now that it became official, it looks a lot better when it becomes official and not something that almost happened. If it was something that almost happened, I would have looked like a fucking asshole. And I thought about that every single day when I was negotiating it, because I was like, now I'm in so deep that if I don't do this the way I've been talking about it, I'm going to look like the biggest piece of shit in the world. So this has to happen just to at least save some face with everybody. But obviously it ended up working out.
Yeah, you're a different man when you have to pull it off.
I told myself every day, like, I have to do this. Like, and as soon as it became something that I had to do, that changed everything moving forward.
And what do we want to do with SSV? Like, Dorking is one thing. Are we doing anything in the States? Are we doing anything in England again? Are we doing, what is our goal in terms of growing?
So there's rules on how much ownership you can have within the same country, as well as across Europe specifically. Not that we're really within that threshold at the moment, but there's some partnerships that I would like to forge, hopefully in the future, between some clubs here. We also work with an academy. It's called IDA. It's based in Sheffield, and they look to recruit international students as kind of like a NCAA alternative. So if you don't get the offer that you like here, maybe you go and you get a degree at the University of Sheffield and you play over there and kind of continue your career on a different path. So there's, expansion of kind of utilizing a city football group-esque multi-club ownership model that is a part of the SSV model in the future.
Like, I want to touch on the academies for a second, because I'm sure you went through the process too as a soccer player, getting recruited for college.
Yeah.
You and I kind of feel the same way about the NCAA and kind of where the NIL took a right-hand turn. We do see a lot more soccer academy alternatives popping up in the States. Do you, Jake, think that that's where the sport here is going as well?
I think it is, yeah. I think, so you had, growing up for me, there were sort of two avenues you could take. There was the academy avenue, and there was the high school club ODP avenue. ODP was the Olympic Development Program. I think it was originally state and nationally funded to try and get American soccer players to eventually get to the same level as everyone that was beating us in Europe. Pretty soon that became privatized, and academies started taking all the best players from ODP. I think today there's probably less than a dozen academies at the youth level, but the ones that exist are hyper competitive, and they allocate almost all the resources there. So if you play for a top tier academy locally, like FC Delco Academy, I think PA Classics has an academy, those teams are playing against the youth national team. They're going to Europe, they're going to Mexico, they're going to South America, they're traveling, and they're getting D1 offers and looks in the 10th, 9th grade. So I think that's probably the top end of where you're going to see the best soccer players are playing at the academy level right now.
And excuse my ignorance, but is like, why aren't there more pipelines from the U.S. to the Premier League? Or are there, and I just don't know, I don't realize that they are?
There, in order to take that jump, you have to be essentially the level of a men's national team player. So you can, kind of forego that process if you're, super talented, if you're Christian Pulisic, essentially. You can, get overseas. There's not really a substantial pipeline to America, to England specifically, at least, because, post-Brexit and there's, FA regulations behind them trying to protect their domestic talent. But I also think the lack of pipeline could stem from, one, lack of infrastructure in the sport. And, there's less money in soccer in America than there is in playing basketball or football. I mean, that's a fact. That's kids grow up playing basketball and football and other sports, and soccer's been taking a back seat this whole time, and the rest of the world has been playing it, and it's their main sport. So they're far ahead. And I also think because of that, number two, people don't take America seriously when it comes to soccer. Why would you spend time trying to recruit in the United States when you can go to Italy, Spain, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, Germany, Croatia? Like, there's so many other places to pull your players from that you're not going to look here first, because we rightfully aren't taken seriously. And I think with the World Cup coming, that we will begin to, be taken more seriously, given the state of the men's national team being the best roster that I think it's ever had. I think those two things contribute to just, lack of popularity, lack of being taken seriously.
Jake, if you had to put yourself back into today's world where you were as a kid trying to decide all this stuff, what would you do right now?
Good question. I think it really all depends on what your long-term goals are. I think if you're serious as a kid and you're like, look, I'm going to be a professional soccer player, and that's seriously on the table for you, I think a lot of those kids look at going overseas. I think regardless, my first step would be to join an academy. The academy is to just have the best coaches, best resources, best exposure. I think you could seriously get some substantial looks if you go the NCAA route and then try and go to a D1 school like Duke or Notre Dame. But inevitably what you're going to end up finding is you're going to have to go overseas on a trial contract, and you're going to have to bang with some of the kids that have been playing pro ball since they were 16. And so realistically, I think this goes back to the original question, is like the best athletes here are playing football, basketball, sometimes even baseball. You get some stud athletes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But, I mean, these kids are pro at 15, 16 over there. And, I mean, you look at like Man United's academy, Arsenal has an academy. They all have academies. And what they do is they're scrimmaging the B team. So you're used to that speed of play. So, like, you can replicate the X's and O's and the strategy, but the thing you can't replicate is how fast people settle the ball and move, and how fast they're going from offense to defense, and the way that everything is moving at that speed. It's tough to replicate. I mean, you can get that in the D1 NCAA, but I think everyone that I've spoken to that's gone overseas and played pro ball, the speed of play is just different. So I think what you're going to want to do is try and get exposed to that as quickly as possible.
You can get into an academy at age 5 overseas, and then next by age 9 if you can continue to cut it. Yeah. And then again, you're pro at 15, 16 if you take that next step, essentially. Maybe not pro on the men's first team, but like you're on that path to pro. 5 to 9, that between those age brackets, if you're good enough to make it over there, I mean, that's really fucking young to know. So that's what you're going up against. You're going up against kids that have known or have had that dream since literally age 5 or 6, that have been in Chelsea or Man U or Man City's academy, that they got a shot to go pro for one of these big clubs. That's what kids here are going to have to compete with, which is borderline impossible right now.
Yep. And that's the other thing too, is, I mean, the best athletes here that are going pro, like, I mean, everyone knew who LeBron was when he was 13, 14 years old. Same with Zion. There is no NBA in England. I mean, there's basketball in Europe, but the best athletes there are playing soccer. And so the Zions and the LeBrons of the world are soccer players. And so, I mean, they're getting to that level very, very, very quickly. So for America, where we have that traditional, you're going to go high school, then you're going to go college, then you declare, doesn't work like that there. So the faster you can get exposed to the speed of play and the athletes that are grown athletes by the time they're 13, 14 years old, I think the better you'll be.
Here, like, what can SSV do for a club in the United States?
I would like to explore ways to create that pipeline, to create a way where American youth has a path to play overseas in England, Spain, Italy. I keep saying England, Spain, and Italy. I don't know why
that's a good way to go to.
My order of operations there. just to try to create pathways for youth to have the option to go overseas, because it doesn't really exist, like I said, unless you're at like the men's national team level or you are that good at a young age playing in the, U18, U21 men's national team sides. So that's my goals of at least, the academy or, other clubs here to maybe create that pipeline or bridge that gap. How we're going to go about that, that's still a work in progress. And that's, part of my business and what I game plan on day to day. But that's the goal, is to also, because everything starts with youth. It all starts with youth participating in the game and playing the game. The sport's not going to become bigger in the future unless the youth of today is participating in the game. And that's my goal, of it, is to be a part of all of that, and financial resources into growing youth the development and the popularity of the sport. Going to see that within the next 4 years.
Jake, how hard is it to balance full-time job and growing this thing and raising your daughter and doing all that at the same time?
How hard is it? I don't know if it's necessarily hard, because I don't necessarily view this as work. Like for me, like you said, I have a young daughter, full-time job. This is my escape, honestly. I think like when you're at work, and that's a grind. And when you're being a dad, that's amazing, but it's also a grind. This is easy. It's hard work, and I want to work hard to do it. I want to stay up late and do it, but I want to stay up late and do it. It's a release. So it's certainly a balancing act, but it's also something that I take a lot of pride in, and it's fun. So it's not as hard to work this into the schedule.
Is that why you think he just needs to get to that level of balancing all those three things, and he's going to dress more like you? That's my bet.
Yeah, the more things you're doing, the less you care. It's kind of where I'm at. He looks great.
He does look great. That's why it's just that I'm jealous. I'm just jealous of it. That's all.
Yeah.
That he has time to shower for clearly an hour if he wanted to, to throw on that talcum powder and swing everything around for a little bit. And
maybe I do. Maybe that's my process. Part of my creative process, thinking over things in the shower. But I have the time to do
it. And, give me the silliest argument that you guys think you have had growing SSV or growing Dorking.
Wow.
That's a good question.
That's a great question. The silliest argument. We haven't really argued yet.
I find that very hard to believe.
We don't really argue.
No, not really. Our dads do, I think.
What do your dads argue about?
They're both really intelligent guys, so I think it's like a competition between them of like who can outsmart the other, whatever they're talking about.
Yeah.
Who's dad smarter?
I have no idea.
That's a good question. I don't know.
They were
very diplomatic, you guys.
They're both just like smart nerds, man. Like I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Like they're just. My dad's a literal crazy person. That could just be something we talk about at a different time. And if my friends ever see this, or anybody that knows my dad ever sees it, even if my dad sees this, he might be a little pissed. But he's a literal maniac.
Yeah, my dad is also out of his mind. So it works.
I think that's good. So does that, you guys have to be a little out of your minds too. If that's the DNA has to flow down somewhere.
Yeah, I'd like to think ours is in a more controlled way.
Yeah, it's in check.
Yeah, it's in check.
It's evolved.
Yeah, but maybe by the time I'm, 50, 60 years old, it won't be in check, and
It'll start to let loose a little more.
Yeah, true.